Today, I begin by acknowledging the contribution of our forefathers who have helped in creating a world based on freedom and human dignity. I extend my respect to people of diverse cultures, faiths, colors, and genders, and pledge to work for equity, inclusivity, peace, and harmony. A very good afternoon to one and all present here. I, Khushi Chaudhary, second year student of DME Media School, welcome you to the fifth edition of the world's first 7-day hybrid international media conference, ICAN5. The International Media Conference, ICAN5, is being organized by DME Media School of Delhi Metropolitan Education in collaboration with the School of Communication and Creative Arts, Deakin University, Melbourne, Australia. Now, I invite Professor Dr. Amrish Saxena, Dean DME Media School, Director DME Studios and Production, and convener of ICAN5 to give us opening remarks for the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Khushi. I begin today by acknowledging the contribution of our forefathers who have helped in creating a world based on freedom and human dignity. I extend my respect to people of diverse culture, faith, color, and gender, and pledge to work for equity, inclusivity, peace, and harmony. I welcome everybody in the third edition of the fourth day of ICAN5. We started on Friday evening, and since that time we have been having all kinds of sessions, which include the plenary sessions, the panel discussions, master classes, and workshops. Mostly in the online mode, but few are in the hybrid mode, and a few are completely in the physical space, because we are in a situation wherein we have to slowly move to the physical space. For the last 2 years, we have been in a habit of having everything online. And in 2020, in fact, when the dates of the conference were scheduled, exactly at that time, the lockdown happened. And then in June, we had to have it completely in the online, but we took advantage of that. And we had the 10-day digital live conference. Last year, 2021, again, in the same period, the second wave happened, and we had to again go online. But this year, we were determined that we will organize it in the hybrid mode. So many sessions. Just now, we had one technical session in the physical space, wherein the chairpersons and the paper presenters had come to DME for doing their presentations, inviting discussion and all. Now, this is a panel discussion. There's a second panel discussion. Yesterday, we had a panel discussion, which was on understanding the rainbow, which was brought to us by Keshav Suri Foundation. And that was an eye-opening session in the sense, since we talk about inclusivity, and which is the main theme of the conference this year. So it was on all LGBTQ people from that community were the panelists, and many such information was shared with the people, which was unheard mainly by most of the people, since we all are not exposed to other gender. So we are trying our best to bring such kind of issues or such kind of aspects of society wherein we need to ponder on, we need to discuss, and some new light can be thrown by the people who are comparatively more enlightened and who can share their knowledge with others. That's the basic objective. And in almost all the sessions of the conference, there are students and teachers and researchers part of this conference, not only of DME, but from other institutions, also from across the borders. This particular session, which is on achieving gender balance in media today, myth or reality, has been brought to us by Professor Maithili Ganjoo. I requested her to do this for us, and she obliged, and because of which so many good scholars are there in this session with us. I welcome Professor Geeta Bamezai, who has always been with me, with DME, whatever academic endeavors we have. She has been there in faculty development program. She has been there in the first edition of ICAN in 2018. I welcome her. And Professor Padma Rani is also with us in this session. She has also been part of ICAN earlier last year. She was one of the scholars who chaired a technical session. And then we have Kulveen with us. Kulveen has also been in one way or the other part of whether it's ICAN or SIFI. And then I am happy to welcome Mausumi Bhattacharyya, who is now again part of the ICAN family. She has joined despite a rough weather at her place in West Bengal. So we are looking forward to have a very lively discussion, and we are all eager to listen to you all. So I'm not taking much time, and I hand it over back to the anchor of the program, Khushi.
Thank you, sir. I'm happy to share that Journalism at DME is the official newsletter of DME Media School. This fortnightly publication covers all the major activities happening in and out of the campus. It is a student-centric newsletter carried out entirely by them under the supervision of faculty members. DME TV is the official YouTube channel of DME, where you can find the playlist related to all the sessions, lecture series, film festivals, and conferences. Today, we have gathered here for the second panel discussion on the topic Achieving Gender Balance in Media Today, Myth or Reality. The moderator for today's session is Dr. Maithili Ganjoo, and the panelists are Dr. Geeta Bamezai, Dr. Padma Rani, Dr. Kulveen, Trehan, and Mausumi Bhattacharyya. I would like to invite Saima Parvez, Assistant Professor at DME Media School and the coordinator of this session, to kindly introduce the panel for the day. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Khushi. And it gives me immense pleasure to introduce you the moderator for today's panel, Dr. Maithili Ganjoo. She is the Dean and Professor at the Faculty of Media Studies and Humanities at Manav Rachna International Institute of Research and Studies, Faridabad. She holds an MPhil and PhD in Sociology from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. She has 3 decades of work experience as a strategic planner and knowledge management specialist with leading media organizations like JWT India, Ogilvy Group M, and as an academician at Manipal Academy of Higher Education and Jagran Institute of Management and Media Communication. She has designed several integrated communication campaigns in the development sector, social marketing, and for brands. As a knowledge management specialist, she has trained professionals, including government officials, journalists, brand managers, and technocrats in communication and media. She has created multimedia knowledge products and curated knowledge platforms, events, workshops, and film festivals for audiences across urban, rural, and outreach areas. She has excellent research skills, academic as well as applied, that have been used in the creation of several human-centered design projects. She is well-versed in qualitative research methods and used them for developing communication campaigns. Ma'am, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you for decorating our session for today's evening. A hearty welcome from all of us at DME.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Moving forward, now I would like to introduce our panelists for today's session. We have with us Professor Dr. Geeta Bamezai. She is former Dean of Academic Affairs and Professor and Head of Department of Communication Research at Indian Institute of Mass Communication. At IIMC, she led national and international communication research projects on development communication in areas of health, women empowerment, literacy to health and environment, and biosafety for national government and UN agencies. Professor Bamezai taught at the Central University of BHU, National Institute of Health and Family Welfare. She was the lead consultant communication to National AIDS Control Organization. Ma'am has also coordinated for the first ever CASP Public Health Journalism Program in collaboration with Oxford University, Reuters, and UNICEF for budding journalists in India. She was the guest editor for 2 special issues of International Journal of Journalism, Education on Gender, Mainstreaming and Education, Social Journalism with special focus on COVID-19. She is an alumni of Switzerland Seminar Series on Public Health, Salzburg, Austria, and of East-West Center Program, Hawaii, USA. As the South Asian Regional Coordinator, Professor Bamezai led the study on women in media in South Asia, which mapped the state of women representation and portrayal in media of 9 countries in 2019. Professor Bamezai was also the project director of national level ICSSR study on women in news and entertainment media in India in 2020. She was the first Asian woman co-chair of the Gender and Communication section of IAMCR for 2 consecutive terms. Currently, she is the principal advisor of a national level NGO UVCT National Center for Adolescents in New Delhi. I have no words after such an elaborate introduction to ma'am. I'm completely speechless. I'm spellbound. Thank you so much, Geeta ma'am, for being here today in our panel discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah, so moving forward, we have Dr. Padma Rani, Professor and Director, Manipal Institute of Communication, Manipal Academy of Higher Education, Manipal as Coordinator of the Media Research Center. She has conducted studies for UNFPA, National Commission for Women, New Delhi. She is the Managing Editor of the Global Media Journal, Indian edition. She is a member of various professional organizations like the Indian International Association of Media and Communication Research, IAMCR, International Communication Association, ICA, International Sociological Association, ISA, Indian Sociological Association, and Indian Association for Women's Studies. In 2013, she visited Germany for a faculty exchange program funded by DAAD to University of Applied Sciences, Bremen. In 2016, she was invited as an international visiting professor to the Technical University of Nuremberg, Germany. Her research interest is in the areas of digital media, gender, human rights, and media effects. She has successfully guided doctoral students and has published papers in both international and national journals. Before joining MIC in 2010, she was the head of communication department at MOP Vaishnav College for Women, Chennai. She completed her master's and doctoral studies from JNU, University, New Delhi. We are simply honored to have such decorated panelists amongst us today. We welcome you, ma'am. So now I will invite my, thank you so much, ma'am. So now I invite my co-coordinator for the session, Sukriti Arora, Assistant Professor at DME Media School, to take the introduction forward.
Thank you so much, Saima, and a very warm welcome to everyone present here, especially to the distinguished panel that we have today. It is my honor and privilege to introduce Dr. Kulveen Trehan, another member of our distinguished panel. She is the PhD Program Coordinator and Senior Faculty at University School of Mass Communication, Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University, Government of NCT of Delhi, with 19 years of experience in teaching and research after having worked in the advertising industry in the creative departments. Her area of specialization is advertising, and along with advocacy, public relations, corporate communication, integrated marketing communication, and digital campaigns. She is a national scholarship holder in economics honors from Punjab University, Chandigarh, and also holds PhD in creative executions in advertising. She is trained in graphic design and market research softwares and did her FAC from Film and Television Institute of India. She is currently involved in an international research project funded by UNICEF and IAMCR on C4D on mapping the efficacy of digital campaign Chaja in rural India. She was part of the team that prepared the global report on Olympics and Paralympics in Tokyo 2020 in collaboration with University of Texas, USA. She has completed several funded projects and several collaborative research projects as principal investigator and researcher. Dr. Trehan was conferred with the iconic Women under the Exceptional Leaders of Excellence category by Women Economic Forum in 2019. She has published in reputed international journals and books by Routledge, Palgrave, Sage, and others. She is perhaps the only Indian female media educator to have been invited to deliver special lecture on advertising literacy at Moscow State University, Russia. She is part of the team that developed the CSBC curriculum modules led by UNICEF and is on fellowship jury for TRF UNESCO. She has been invited by the government of Delhi for various recruitments in their advertising agency and curriculum assignments. Dr. Trehan has been a resource person for training courses for senior defense officers organized by Ministry of Information and Broadcasting and several other ministries, government departments, PSUs, and private organizations for several years. She has been invited on many panels and juries in India and abroad, latest being the Exchange for Media 40 Under 40 Awards. A very warm welcome to you, Dr. Trehan. It is our honor to have you with us. Our final panelist is Dr. Mausumi Bhattacharyya, Associate Professor and in charge at Center for Journalism and Mass Communication at Visva-Bharati University. She has completed both her master's and doctoral degrees in journalism and mass communication from the University of Calcutta and has also completed her postdoctoral research on mobile telephony and empowerment of rural women at the Center for Culture, Governance and Media, Jamia Millia Islamia in New Delhi, after being awarded a full fellowship grant for 2 years by the Indian Council of Social Science Research, ICSSR, Ministry of Human Resources and Development. She ran the US State Department Alumni Ties funded international collaborative project, The Room Where It Happens, involving students from 6 universities of Greece and India on media literacy related to misinformation and disinformation as a co-partner, along with 2 academicians from Greece and other academicians from India in 2021. Dr. Bhattacharya started her academic career as a guest faculty of Loreto College and St. Xavier's College in Kolkata. She did her postdoctoral research earlier as well on mobile communication and empowerment with a scholarship jointly given by the International Association of Women in Radio and Television and Focus Norway in 2016. She was selected from India by the US government to be a part of the prestigious study of the US Institute Scholars in Journalism and Media programs in 2016. Her areas of specialization include new media, science communication, audience research, gender studies, convergence journalism, public relations, film studies, media education and literacy, and mobile communication, for which she was nominated from India in the scientific committee of the Symposium on Asia-USA Partnership Opportunities organized by Kennesaw State University, USA, held in Atlanta in April 2013. She was selected as the Eastern Regional Coordinator of the People's Archive of Rural India, PARI, the online digital archive in 2015. She is attached to the academic bodies of different colleges and universities in India and one of the curriculum development committees of the National Institute of Open Schooling, NIOS, Ministry of Human Resources, Government of India. For 4 years, Dr. Bhattacharya served on the Indian board of IWAT. She is one of the pioneering members of Young Leader Think Tank, YLTT, of FES Germany India chapter. She has also been involved in formulating the Youth Agenda of India by YLTT. She was nominated from India for an international learning project for shaping globalization held in Bonn, Germany in 2010. We are very happy to have this esteemed panel with us today. I welcome all of you here and thank you so much for joining us. I would now like Professor Maithili Ganjoo to please convene this panel as she has visualized it and introduce us to what we will be hearing about today. Over to you, Maithili, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much. A very good afternoon to all present here. To begin with, I would like to put on record my affirmation to the pledge on inclusion and diversity, acceptance of inclusion and diversity that has been set here. And this is something that I think I can say that I pledge the same, and I can say this on behalf of the entire panel that is present with me. In the same way, I would like to thank the entire team of DME and the organizers who are also the organizers of this event, ICAN5, which is led by Dr. Susmita Bala and Dr. Amresh Saxena. For me to come and curate this panel discussion, I am highly obliged. Before I go ahead, I would also want to extend a very warm welcome to the erudite group that has assembled here, which is my panelists today, and also express my gratitude because taking away time from your busy schedule is something that, is something that I'm really grateful for. We are going to be discussing a topic which is sort of oft talked about, and I think we have all worked a lot on these issues. And therefore, today, what we are trying to do and propose is our understanding and culling out exactly where we stand as we talk about the issues in 2022. to begin with, just putting a little context to how we are going to go about it, it's important to understand gender balance. Now, gender balance is something which we often tend to synonymously use with the term gender equality. And equality really refers to, and when we talk of equality, it refers to having the equal access for all genders, access and opportunity to socio-economic sort of fields, which include health, which include education, which include employment, and so on and so forth. Therefore, the way it has been sort of situated and structured so far in our understanding, it often is about talking about the women. We sort of take it, I mean, that's what the data, that is what the reality, that is what common sense nowadays also tells us, that it is the women who have to basically being given the equal opportunity. So gender balance is a little different. To that extent, gender balance refers not merely to the binary that we are talking about. It also considers the equal opportunity for the varied understanding of gender that we have today. We talk about men, women, as well as the queer community, and we are looking at gender more as a broad spectrum. And therefore, when we talk of a balance, we do talk about balance in that entirety. So as to say that if gender balance is something that is like an input, which is something that Kulveen has just told me, and I really liked it, that it's almost like an input, and if done well and concentrated upon, we could think of an output which is gender equality. So to say that it's like a strategy really that we can use it as. And right now in this discussion, we shall always also look at it more like a, more like a lens through which we will evaluate, we'll discuss the media scenario. Now, why the media? I mean, why limiting it to media? Of course, for obvious reasons, because we all are researchers and thinkers of media and teachers of media and students of media, but also because now media is a very important, I mean, it's almost like more than all pervasive. I think the all pervasive term is dwarfing in front of the impact that media is having in our lives today. As a sociologist, it kind of worries me sometimes because I feel that a lot of socialization processes that we had, like, what it meant to parent a child, what it meant to sort of advise a child, the value system that you gave, all this is also something that the media has very much gone into and, taken that space. So we have studies now showing us how the socialization is very much impacted by media today. Not only the socialization, but even the cultural artifacts with which we live. Leave aside the popular culture, but even the main, language, the way we speak, the way we convey, the way we, that whole thing of from intimacy to non-intimacy to public, from public to private, everything is today sort of guarded, presented, and taken over almost by the media. So it's important for us to therefore look at these concepts, which hitherto we've been using more in the sociological and cultural domains, and political domains, and see how and what is happening to them in the context of media, which you and I also are responsible for creating as well as consuming, and of course, within brackets, condemning. So, because I have this group of thinkers, women thinkers, who have really been working very hard and putting their thought to this entire gamut of questions and situations, I think that, it'll be very interesting for us to basically consider the academic aspect, but then kind of leave it behind and try to talk about various things regarding media and gender balance in a way that it helps us to understand where we stand, and when is it that our stand is something that sort of tends to forget the theory, or tends to forget the sensitivity that is required, and where is it that we actually need to hold back and or let go, whichever way, in order to be able to actually working towards this gender balance, which, as I said, is an important sort of input for us to move in the direction that we would want to. So I'll start my, inviting my panelists to talk, and I'm going to do this in more in terms of, the questions that I have in my mind. And to begin with, I'll go to Geeta ma'am, and I'll request her to basically step in as a researcher and as an academician over this time, and she's sort of seen how things started, how the whole debate of gender started, especially affecting the Indian media, which to my understanding probably was the women's conferences that were UN Women conferences, when all the agendas really came up seriously and government started taking it up. And if I'm not mistaken, it's the 95 or 85 women's conference where everything was set rolling. And later in 95 at Beijing, when we all came back and we said, hey, now it's going to be a part of our policy. And I remember even media was something that we were very excited about, because media policies are going to change and media is going to be more representative, and all those things started happening in 95. So ma'am has been a part of that entire movement and has done a lot of work. I request her to put it all in a context for us as we speak in 2022, and tell us how does she look at the gender balance situation, both in terms of construction as well as representation. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Professor Maithili Ganjoo, and I'd like to extend my heartiest congratulations to the organizers, especially Professor Ambrish Saxena and his team, for giving a platform to all of us to talk about inclusion and from a gendered perspective. So without much ado, I like to actually paraphrase what you said, because rather than going into the history, because the history is long, uneven, and also, meandering through the historical events, how we have arrived today, would be a much longer discourse. I would rather, do a little spin and perhaps talk about today and then see what has changed or nothing has changed, because I think that we are in a dilemma to understand that we are still talking about gender. We're still talking about gender imbalance, or we just started coming abreast with this whole idea that we are not where we should have been. And whether the progress has been steady or there's been no progress. In fact, one of the enduring issues of media research has been the participation, representation, and portrayal of women in media, mostly in the West, but also in South Asian countries, to suggest that everything happened in Europe and in America largely would actually be ignoring the fact that we started way back in 1975, and you did mention about the struggle that we went through, development of many women study centers in different universities, which are supposed to focus exclusively on women, not just in media, but in the social, economic, and political spheres as well. So, we are also looking at, in fact, I like to say that we can't really, be very apologetic, because if we look at Sustainable Development Goals, which is just about, 8 years away from us, where gender equity as the goal number 5 talks about many issues that we will be discussing today. And we would like to know that half the world is invisible, which is, almost like 49.58 or 3.9 billion women in the world. And they're not there, they're invisible. Even if they're there, they're not counted. So has there been any change? To my mind, to suggest that not much has changed would be actually oversimplifying things. And because the media landscape has become bigger, it has become more technology savvy, and the media ambient environment has made people more inclined to seek more information. Okay, so there's more information. But the dichotomy is that changes in media landscape comprising of platformization, dominance of datafication, algorithms, and also slacktivism are happening at a great pace. But these gains have not accrued in correcting gender inequalities in media production and representation today. We might feel very happy that we have arrived in terms of, great pace in internet penetration and in mobile telephony. In fact, we have seen that there are unprecedented gains in media growth, like information communication technology, are theoretically often seen as enablers. Why are we actually emphasizing that, women should be counted? Because, media and the technology, they have always been seen as enablers of development. And through equitable participation can lead to women's empowerment. So that kind of a, cause and effect, not a direct one, because I think we are also situated in the normative and social and cultural realities also, which also need to be taken into consideration. Yet their effectiveness is determined largely by the social, because of the technology growth. We can't ignore the fact that socio-cultural and political environment in which they are initiated and put to use is also to be recognized as significant. In fact, we feel very great, and we talk about that communication technology is among the country's top 5 economic growth drivers, including infrastructure, healthcare, automobiles, and financial services. In fact, we are second to China with 642 million users of online participants. So that's a great number. And the number of smart users, we may actually touch 1.1 billion by 2024, just 2 years as per the Ericsson report. And right now we are just about 748 million. So it's going to actually jump a kind of a quantum jump. And then we also see that, OTT services are also growing at 21.8% CAGR, which will actually reach to 1.7 billion by 2023, as per the report in 2016, reported by Economic Times. And also corresponding data of television viewers is also showing that the difference between men and women is not really very different, because they are almost same, almost parallel to each other. And we also have seen unprecedented growth in 200 million households have television access to television, which is a great number if you look at an average 4 members in a family. So that really means almost touching 1 billion. So, but what has not changed? So this all has changed. The technology has been unprecedented in terms of making strides in bringing more digitized information. Yet this democratization of the media has left women on the margins, since it has not empowered women to the same extent as men. As per 2020 report, connectivity is more important than ever. As per GMCA report of Gender Gap 2020, it has been seen connectivity is more important than ever, because internet access is gateway to critical information, to services and opportunities available to many people for the first time. Because if you look at India, it's a little, very interesting fact that there are more mobile users in rural India. than in urban. And despite its importance, mobile access and use remain unequal. A key barrier is smartphone ownership, which is also 20% lower for women than for men. This is a GSMA for the entire developing and emerging countries as such. And it is critical that the mobile gender gap is understood and overcome, as mobile ownership and use provides life-changing benefits to women, their families and communities and the economy. So a majority of India's internet actually users were male, and as I mentioned, in rural areas, around 58% of rural internet users are male, while only 42 are female, whereas 43% female in urban areas use internet as compared to 57 men. So there is a 7% digital gender gap as such. We also see the new digital platforms which are coming to us. There also we see a stark gap, because in fact 80% of the total users are men, and so that leaves out only 20% women. And as for television, I mentioned that the gap is very slight, for 348 million men to 327 million women. So in what ways things have remained the same or declined for women in media in India? I mean, it's little startling to know that even Bangladesh, even Nepal, they have a better female labor work participation as compared to India. In fact, India has gone down from 26% in 2005 to 19% in 2020. And if you look at our neighboring countries, like Bangladesh has 35% work participation of women, and Sri Lanka has 31% work participation. And in some other countries of the world, especially in Europe and also emerging economies, it's half, whereas we are sliding down. We are really sliding down. So what are the issues? So I would actually disagree with this whole notion that we have to only compare the numbers. Have women arrived if they have a mobile in their hands? No, not really. Because I think in the post-feminist, talk that we have, that, from a very feminist perspective, women's movement, post-feminism would be what? So it would not just be in terms of how numbers, we are looking at intersectionalities, more inclusion, because women mostly from better background, better opportunities, better education have really changed the gap in a more positive way. But most of the women, things have not really changed for them. Women coming from, from a disadvantage, from a minority, from ethnic, from a different language, linguistic, and from, let's say, from a class, would actually have been ignored totally. So intersectionality is a very important part of how do we look at gender, and how we need to understand, assess, and also analyze whether there has been any significant change. So I would take another 2 to 3 minutes, if you allow me, to talk about that, the political economy of the media in India. We feel great that we have the largest number of newspapers, publications, and good number of television channels, going up to 800 plus. And we have a good film sector, and we have a OTT coming, digital, everything is almost taking us to that route. But the political economy of the media in India, and also which includes ownership patterns, and they determine the content negatively, which affect women's empowerment, which includes low levels of media workforce participation, less women. In fact, I would like to highlight here that GMM report, Global Media Monitoring Project report, suggests that we have gone down from 21 to 14%. Focus is on women in news, and they are the sources. So very few women actually make it to the news or to the to the contents of the newspapers and into the television. And they are not even considered as reliable sources of information, which can really, give you a perspective which is from a gendered perspective. You still get a male perspective. Even if there is a news related to a woman or a women related issue is being discussed, you still have a domination of a male perspective coming in more forcefully. So we have an underrepresentation at decision-making levels, okay, and including on issues related to portrayal of women in media. In fact, most of the leading media companies are owned by large conglomerates, which are controlled by the founding families, as per the Media Ownership Monitor report of 2018. And among the most read newspapers and most viewed television channels in India, only one newspaper company, Hindustan Times, and its affiliates is owned by a woman. Mm. And then we use the same overall number to draw, in terms of, as I mentioned, our participation in workforce is so low. It's come down to 19%. So from there, we can actually use that as a proxy indicator to suggest that women's participation in the labor force in the media is also around the same level. It has come down. And this is perhaps further vetted by some of the work which is coming to us from, let's say, News Laundry and UN Women study about India. Then we also have a GMM report. And then I would also like to refer to our own study, which we brought out in 2020, which was a South Asian study, which we did for among the 9 South Asian countries. And we did one national study in India. So we find that even when we are able to, when women are able to enter the media as professionals, many women journalists experience slow or limited progress. In fact, the existence of glass ceiling is not denied even by women who have made it big. And and what has not changed has actually been the portrayal of women and their status in the media, which is really a very glaring issue as such. We are restricted to providing just a visual support, whereas and glamorized largely. They're glamorized. I mean, they're more younger. There are no older women making. They're not the news anchors. The more younger you are, more likelihood that you will make it to the to the studios as a presenter. Whereas the technical support is provided by men who are in a more powerful position and they draw more paychecks. So, that has been what we have also seen in India. And in content production, the proliferation of primarily digital media may signal lowering of barriers to decentralization of media content production and distribution, which implies that there's a democratization of information. However, the same large media institutions control these digital platforms also. But there is a suggestion that because digital media is advancing in a very fast pace, it is providing more openings to to women as such to use that platform for various, disseminating either as an online news portal or actually as a blog, or even forming a network of group where they can really share information and also disseminate information. And which, of course, there's only one exception to the print media, which is Khabar Lahariya, which actually made it to almost like a film, made it to the Oscars, which talks about how women really made it so well to bring out a print version, print newspaper for such a long time in a very far away, backward area. And they've actually been going from strength to strength. So I would say that we may find that the trend in online media where women's representation as per network of women in media is concerned, they say that 42% of women in media are actually making to the digital sector as such, digital media sector. So this is where I like to stop and maybe take up very specifically, what has not changed in the second part of the panel discussion.
Thank you, Geeta ma'am. I mean, that was like, you summed up all the problems that, still are there, and therefore terms like gender balance and gender empowerment and all those kind of just state terms. I would like to actually take the question now to Kulveen and address that other part of it. This is like the media, the industry, of course, is technologically led, and Geeta ma'am told us, the facts and figures and the qualitative aspect. But there is this whole thing about creativity. There is this whole thing about being in a creative domain where, everybody is equal, At the same time, we know that creative processes also are pretty much controlled in terms of what is it that is out and what is not. So anyway, I'll not say this. I'll expect you to kind of take us through the creative industry, again, the media industry, and tell us, how are you looking at that industry in terms of the discussion we've been having?
Okay, thank you, Maithili. And yes, like you said, Professor Bamezai has almost, given us a picture with regards to various important touch points and various determinants of what we are seeing with regards to gender representations, portrayals, the idea of gender equality, which subsumes the idea of equity in itself. Now, I come from the creative industry, and to begin with, at the outset, let me congratulate Professor MRIIRS Saxena from DME, various international institutions and collaborators for picking up the theme of inclusivity and convergence along with alternative negotiations in this year's conference. Many congratulations to all of you for being sensitive and inclusive. And of course, my compliments to Professor Ganjoo for talking about achieving gender balance in Indian media, whether that's a myth or a reality. And this discussion to me becomes all the more important because it comes right at the backdrop of the spillover layers deodorant advertisement had on social media. Not just the backlash on the ad, but also various kinds of conversations it stirred up to the time when ASCI intervened, when Government of India went ahead and asked the brand to withdraw the advertisement. The conversations were not just limited to withdrawal of the advertisement, censuring the brand, but also conversations started to move towards who created the advertisement. Whether the creative professionals, the industry I come from, the creative communication industry, is responsible for telling stories, and whose stories are we telling? For whom are we creating those stories? So in my opening remarks, I would be touching upon three major points. One, whose stories are we telling in Indian advertising today? And whether the way we are framing the advertising and branded communication content is different in the digital and shared media spaces from the way we created content on print, radio, and television a few years back. Also, how will we negotiate the idea of balance, gender balance, in its interrelationship with what is happening in the advertising industry today? So those are the three major touch points which I would like to include. To begin with, it all starts with mapping and monitoring. As an academician, the research on mapping and monitoring gender portrayals in advertising began many, many years ago. Reams have been written on it. But unfortunately, even in the 2019 UNICEF and Gina Davis Institute report on bias and inclusivity in advertising suggests that there are some constants, that there is disproportionate representation to begin with. which again, takes us back to 2012 when UNESCO gave certain guidelines with regards to how advertising should portray men, women, and all sexual orientations. Unfortunately, in advertising, we have no space for others. We have no space for other sexual orientations, as if they do not bathe, they do not eat Maggi noodles, as if they do not require washing powder. They are totally invisible in advertising, but for moment marketing or some special real-time marketing communications that we create only for transgenders or LGBTQ. So that is one situation which research tells us the 2019 report has been disheartening, because it almost supports something I did in 2014-15. It is available in the public domain on television advertising in India. The same sex roles, the same power dynamics in different proportions exist. So in that sense, it is disheartening. But what heartens me, what gives me hope, is another report which came out in 2022. And that was a research study which was undertaken by Kantar, that is a marketing research firm. And I'm happy that the corporate organizations, as well as non-statutory bodies like ASCII, are undertaking research on gender stereotyping. In fact, they use the unstereotyped MRIIRS to understand how Indian consumers respond to brand advertising vis-a-vis gender portrayals. And what we found was hope. Progressive advertising was positively correlated to purchase intent for the first time. Of course, it can be possible because post-pandemic, Indian consumers, not just in terms of what kind of media we consume. Professor Ganjoo has talked about media ubiquity, and I know of media multitasking to the extent that I understand that media consumers have become far more segmented, especially with regards to certain product categories. But what has also changed is the relationship between people and brands. And that is what was reflected in this particular study, which spoke about how, brand equity will go up by 51% if you go in for progressive portrayals, especially if you include, women in aspirational roles. We've been seeing women in non-aspirational roles for far too long. A recent advertisement was yet another disappointment when Beju's, Beju's brings in an advertisement in which a roundtable conversation has a man explaining the unique selling proposition of Beju's to all the women around him, and everybody is listening. So mansplaining is something which is still prevalent. But the hope, I said, is important because, like I said, how would we negotiate? How would we negotiate a more balanced space in the creative industry? Comes from this one-line mantra that we have to be more, attuned towards data, towards recent researches as creative communicators. As a storyteller, as a brand storyteller, as an academic who teaches or supervises campaigns in the classrooms, I have to be more inclusive of the insights I gather from researchers across spectrum in multi-platform economies to be able to create stories which are, if not balanced, they are gender neutral, they are more inclusive, right? And also stories which bring in insights like progressive portrayals and their interrelationship, their correlationship with, various sales as well as intent-driven, action-driven variables which we all calculate in advertising effectiveness. So that is another area which I needed to bring home the point. Now, coming back to the idea of how, framing is very important. In the past, most researchers, I remember when I was a student and my dissertation in the year 1999 reflected Erwin Goffman's 6 constructs in a very strong way. Another study by Professor Jetwani in 2018, I was part of the peer review discussions, again found similar stories cutting across product categories. Yeah. Another story in 2019, another study, and this one also brings in the idea of how stereotypical roles, or how we perpetuated the stereotypes of what men should be, the binaries of sex roles, power inequitable dynamics in the boardroom, in bedrooms, in living rooms, everywhere, right? The relationship per se, for example, in the latest study, we found out, we were doing a study on femvertising and brand cause fit relationships. And we found out that at the end of the day, the whole idea of main maa hoona or maa ki zimmedari remains thrice interrelated with women as compared to their male counterparts. So the whole idea of who's the parent in advertising remains, in advertising communication, if I say so, remains so much patrilinear. So these are the realities, these are the existential realities. So when I engage with this question of achieving gender balance, I engage with, like Professor Ganjoo said, in a festive manner. We are looking at equal opportunities in polity, in economy, in society, in technology, but along with that in media as well. So we're looking at it in a very holistic ecosystem. Along with that, we are questioning the existential realities that are happening. What is also encouraging when I speak about whether it can be a reality years later is another campaign which has become the talk of the town. There is a meta discourse on Share the Loads, new insertion by Ariel, in which the female questions, do you really consider me your equal? And the entire story culminates into an end wherein he's forced. Advertising is a persuasive communication, but today we moved away from this whole idea of inform, persuade, remind to advocate, to compel, to authenticate, to communicate responsibly. And that culminates in that advertisement when the man is compelled to revisit his contribution to his partner's life, to the domestic chores, and how he engaged with his man-and-man relationships and a man-woman relationship today. So a myth or a reality, a yes and a no, Maithili.
Thank you so much, Kulveen. Always a pleasure to listen to you. And so 2 things have caught my attention. Just think about it when I come back to you. One is, looking at the brand equity from the point of view of what you create, that I think is also a very important sort of way forward. That is what you have to emphasize. And the other thing is the whole process in which creativity happens, these ads happen. I mean, we know there is a planner who's looking for insights more in a box and a structure. And therefore, for instance, Ma becomes a very important sort of peg. And what does it do really to the communication that comes out? And of course, the fact that how many women really are there when these ideas are taking place. We'll come back to all that. Just hold your thought on that. As we move on to my next panelist, Dr. Padma Rani, who I want her to kind of also look at that other media, the traditional media, which sort of stands always in comparison with what has happened in this new age when we have the social media taking sort of everything by a storm. So even you said that, Kulveen, or ma'am also said that, was it different when we were just with our television and newspaper, like were we more controlled and were we kind of, in know of what we are saying, versus what social media has done to us? I mean, it's kind of allowed us to say whatever we want to say and kind of, then get into those issues. So over to you, Padma, just give us a sense of how you look at it in the traditional media.
Yeah, at the outset, I would like to thank the ICAN organizer, especially Professor MRIIRS Saxena, for giving us this opportunity and, having me as part of the ICAN members year and year. I would like to really take a look back at when women entered what promoted or what gave a push to women entering the media or journalism as a profession. And that was the growth of the magazines, in the 70s and 80s, when we saw magazine boom in India. And that expanded the job market for women journalists. And those women who entered the journalism field in print media, magazines, are some of them have gone on to hold an important position or influential positions in the media industry. Now, when women entered the magazine, covering softer issues, writing feature articles and things, and this you can see is a reflection in their roles when they joined the newspaper industry also. If you look at a number of reports, in fact, I tried to search in the last few days about the number of women in media and things of that kind. Specific details to traditional media, which is newspaper, magazines, television, and radio. I couldn't find much of it. Most of the data is still on 2016 or 2008 and things of that kind. And some of the works like Margaret Gallagher, Amu Joseph, Akhileshwari, Ranu Tomar, one of my students also worked on women journalist, Manjushri Naik. All of these was done before 2016. And in all these studies, if you look at it, what they are trying to document is that the profile of the women who entered the journalism field were more women who were affluent, who came from liberal socioeconomic backgrounds. And that is how there is also a kind of a hierarchy or a further wedge between the roles or the status of women in English media versus or English media in comparison to your other language media that we have in India. In fact, I've looked at studies which have been done on women journalists in Assam or women journalists in Andhra Pradesh. Almost all of them point to this fact that the English media is mostly by women who come from this kind of a background. And also that, there is a lot of difference in the working conditions that these women enjoy. The women in the English media are better in terms of working conditions, in terms of pay and other perks in comparison to the other language media. Now, it's not only the profile of the women and the profile of the working group of women who are part of this, but also, I feel that the myth that the print is dying down. Okay, the print might be dying down across the world, but not in India. And not in South Asian countries, I feel. And there is data to support that print is still growing in India. The English media is growing at almost 6% per annum, whereas the other regional media is growing, or the other language media is growing at a much faster rate in compared to the English media. Now, but there is still a thing that, print is going to die down, and therefore the charm of the profession is also going down among students. This I'm saying out of my own experiences of interviewing students year after year for journalism, and I see a decline there in the enthusiasm to take up journalism as a profession. And some of the reasons is that they feel that, the working conditions are not good, or, there is no stability in the profession. And that has been compounded by the pandemic. Because in pandemic, as we all know, a lot of newspapers shut down their editions. They also cut down heavily on their manpower resources. And all this has also affected women. Yes, it has affected men also, but it has affected women more because of their limitations in terms of, reallocating themselves or realigning their roles and things of that kind. Now, now, why are we looking at, the profile of the women in the media and the jobs that they are doing there? Because even now, not more than 20% of the women are, of the total employed in the print media are women. Some of the organizations I know even today, the regional language or the other language media do not have women on the editorial team at all. And this is also in a way affecting how women issues get covered in this. And there are a number of reports which are pointing out to that if women are in positions of power in newspaper organizations, then the issues would get covered in a very different way. And I feel that this is one of the reasons why there is, coverage, where if you talk of women's issues, majority of them are crimes against women, because they offer a sensational story or they add to their TRPs or to their, sellings. Yes, in English media, to a large extent, there is equality in terms of professional competence, promotions, assignments, opportunities, and salaries. And this also has been reinforced in the studies that I've talked about, but not in the other language media. In fact, in the other language media, the gender dynamics, the security issues is something that has been really highlighted. And especially if you take the television into account, it is only, yes, the Doordarshan days, we had women who were as TV anchors, and Geeta Bamezai ma'am has already pointed out that it was mostly in the news anchor role or the reporter's role that we were seeing women, not as somebody at the technical background who were behind the camera doing a lot of things. Now, here also the whole idea of, having women, these women got more visibility than your print media journalists. Yeah. And the women on television like Barkha Dutt, Maya Sharma, Sagrika Ghosh, Uma Sudhir, Dhanya Rajendran, Navika Kumar, these have also become a role model for some of the younger women to join the television. Maybe because they are visually more appealing, they are seeing them sitting in their drawing rooms and things, but the opportunity for women here also is limited. And again, in television, like the print, there's a wide disparity between the English and the other language media. In fact, if you go outside studios, there are very minimal number of women that you can see. The major concern, if you look at it for, not many women there, is also because of the long working hours. They feel that the lifetime opportunities are few because, most women who are above 40 are not encouraged so much by these channels. The glamour quotient is also highlighted in the television channels. And there's a lot of discrimination at workplace and safety issues, which is paramount. Women journalists especially get harassed while reporting. They are subjected to violence by the people, and therefore they are prone to violence and harassment from the two sides, both from their office colleagues and also from the people for whom they are reporting or for whom they are bringing the news to their homes. And this kind of yes, we see more women there, but we feel there are more women, but not more than 20%. And as you go up, the glass ceiling still exists. Like I just did a random search, and except for the New Indian Express, which has appointed an editor a few days back, there is no newspaper which has a female editor right now. Yeah, so that is the kind of patriarchy or whatever you can call it still which exists in our media. Yes, radio, radio is something that's a little different from the print and television. And, somehow the evolution of women's radio programming has been associated with feminist movements. And this has, also happened when in the 1940s, late 1940s and 1950s in Great Britain and other places. In India, you have the community radio. Even though it is known as the third model of radio, it offers an alternative to public and commercial broadcasting. Community radio is generally run by volunteers and serves the specific local communities that they are associated, they are situated in. And in India also, we have a number of community radios. And I would like to talk a little about Radio Sangam. Now, Radio Sangam was basically set up by the Deccan Development Society, exclusively run by women. Sangam basically means a forum for women to take decisions at the village level collectively. And in Radio Sangam, you'll, if you happen to visit Radio Sangam, if you happen to visit Hyderabad, do go to Radio Sangam, because one of my students did a field work there, and we were so impressed by the women there. One of the main program directors there in the station, 80-year-old lady who did not communicate in terms of the scientific language, but while we were asking her, because most of the radio concentrates on agriculture, since this is largely an agricultural area, and also on other source of allied incomes that those women can generate. And she very specifically talked to us about monoculture, about how to nurture nature's soil. Today we are talking about soil protection. She was talking about those things, how to preserve good hybrid seeds and things of that kind. And I think that is empowerment at the grassroots level. Maybe, at the top when we look, the picture is not so glorious, but I think small initiatives like this, like the Radio Sangam, and there are other community radios also which are run by women. Then also the Khabar Lehariya, it might be just one, but I think these are initiatives which push us to realize that women need to take initiative, and yes, that will slowly lead to the empowerment and gender equity that we all desire to have in the days to come. But if you look at the mainstream media, there is a lot that needs to be, the gap is still wide open, the opportunities still exist, and it needs to be covered up.
Thank you, Padma. I mean, my net takeout is at two levels. One is that you see radio as a very interesting phenomena where we do have women's participation. I think more also linked to the development sector, and the policies of the government, which has sort of led to this kind of thing. And also, of course, the main issue of representation is very much a big question that we are talking about here. Quickly, I'll move to my final panelist today with this understanding and explanation for the fact that we are just talking about women, whereas right in the beginning I did say that we have to be inclusive in the sense that we have to have that space and voice, which is the most important thing today that we talk about whenever we say gender. And to Mausumi, therefore, I'm going to give this whole responsibility of getting us update on what is happening in the latest media forums, and especially talk about the inclusivity of gender, which is something that is absolutely the essential part of where we are today. Over to you, Mausumi.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maithili Ganjoo. And at the outset, let me convey my sincere thanks to the organizers, DAME, Professor Ambrish Saxena, and the other organizers. I'm really very delighted to be a part of this, that to share a panel with Professor Geeta Bamezai, Professor Padma, Rani, and dear friend Kulveen. So it's an honor actually. And yes, the way Professor Geeta Bamezai gave us a big landscape, the gender, the way the inclusivity and the way things are happening in the entire South Asian countries and all. So it was really, it's a learning experience for me. And Kulveen then, of course, as per her specialization, she very critically actually talked about the advertising different perspectives of gender, and I like the way she mentioned about she's very up to date, and the way she mentioned about the queer content and those same sex things, a bit of that. And of course, Professor Padma Rani, the traditional media, the way she said. So my job is almost done. But I would like to connect a bit of Professor Geeta Bamezai's thing, the way she mentioned a bit of OTT and the newest platform, media platform, and then the way Kulveen mentioned about the other gender, and of course, the way you set the tune, Professor Maithili Ganjoo. So I think we should be, of course, we should inclusive this other part of the which we have not heard so far. So, and before getting into that, I think I should talk about a bit about OTT also. And we all know that we have been observing this over-the-top market coming into its own during the COVID-induced pandemic and lockdown. So, and with theaters shut, outdoor activities ordered, suspended, people explored the route to getting entertained via their smartphones. So to escape from the emotional pressure of being confined within four walls, viewers of OTT content willingly opted for subscription plans that we have seen. I will get into the content, more of into content, because the landscape has already been given to us. And this implies that platforms like Netflix, Disney, then Big Flix, and others catering to the Indian diaspora since 2016, 6 years back, found soaring acceptance and demand only around 2020 post-breakout of the COVID-19. And the strong push the pandemic provided to the growth of OTT platforms emerges from the analysis of data available for the period. OTT giant Netflix recorded a 30% increase in their user base only in 1 month, that is from February 2020 to March 2020, which is remarkable. And we have seen this actually rise. Leading platforms witnessed significant and quick escalations in their revenue graph during the 3 months of national lockdown. Contrasting this to a steep loss of revenue for most other forms of businesses due to the restrictions. The altering preferences of viewers to online entertainment got magnified at that point of time. National OTT players like ZEE5, which ranks among the top 30, recorded growth in paid subscriber base to the tune of 45%, and subscription collection grew by 80%, which we have also noted. So such thing like this different OTT platforms, the way the revenue actually went up to 200% subscriber base post March 2020, while movie viewing via OTT rose by 236%. I mean, all-time record in all-time media, across the media. And the enormous momentum the OTT industry gathered during the pandemic is also apparent from the fact that Alt Balaji registered almost 17,000 first-time subscriber every day, just over 10,000 in the pre-COVID period. So such coming to age of OTT platform augured well for a production house, storytellers, directors in the form of a new communication channel, leveraging with which they could explore subjects and topics which are not often portrayed by the commercial audiovisual entertainment industry as well as the traditional media, as we have traditionally known and symbolized the theaters also. Societal anomalies, gender issues, politics and its fallout, and crimes committed are some of the themes selected by creators to base their work on. So thus presenting their perspective about existing issues and experiences with the intent of knowledge creation through entertainment. So this trend was, noticed. For example, Breathe, which premiered on Amazon Prime and delved into the aspect of how far can one go for their loved family and friends. It follows the efforts of a father who learns that only an organ transplant can save his child. He pulls at all stops, ethical and unethical, to manage a donor for the ailing son. In Kota Factory, we saw the makers critically examine the working of the educational coaching industry of Kota, questioning the way it caters to students enrolling with the centers to prepare for competitive examinations. Similar content is generated by national OTT players who find favor with their viewers. Series like Sacred Games, Pictures, Panchayat underline the OTT platform's potential in developing content about complex and sensitive issues. Moreover, given their reach and penetration, it has been proved that it is a potent medium to share socially relevant and inspiring messages with the viewers. Now I would come into I'd like to discuss the queer content and the OTT. So it will not be out of seeing to deduce that OTT is a potent instrument to spread messages about gender issues and discrimination among the masses. Given the viewership of OTT platforms command, they can be powerful channels to cascade alternative opinions and realities, thus preparing them to accept alternatives. Series questioning socially constructed gender binaries can aid in making people aware of the cognitive and emotional life of gays and lesbians to emphasize their normality and abilities, countering the notion of them being quote unquote not normal or ailing. Alt Balaji, Z5, Your TV, Click, then Prime Fix, Amazon, and other platforms have aired web series delving into same-sex love. I would like to, be very specific here with few examples, like Made in Heaven, streamed by Amazon Prime Video, sensitively and deftly handles the topic of daily nuances of a wedding planner couple, the husband being bisexual. Societal prejudices and obstacles they can create in the lives of people with alternative sexuality have also been highlighted in the series, probably subtly making viewers aware of the need for inclusion so others can lead their lives happily and peacefully. Romil and Jugal, the protagonists, also showcase the struggle of the queer duo is made to endure, given the family's opposition to such a match and society's orthodoxy towards queer people. I would like to mention here another popular series in Netflix India. The original is Ajeeb Dasta, which presents to viewers two queer accounts featuring top-notch actresses like Konkona Shen Sharma and Aditi Rao Adri. They are cast in Gil Pucci, directed by Neeraj Dhawan. So they present the story of two close friends, one developing unbridled feelings for the other, adding complexities to a relation otherwise held by others. This account brings forth the dynamics intricate to queer relations, essential heights for society to become aware of the emotional experiences of such people. Married Women, first season 3, the both streaming on Alt Balaji, are the other web series in this genre. First season 3 narrates the account of two girls coming into terms with their sexual preferences and undertaking the journey of love and togetherness. A vital feature emerging from the analysis of different originals is the gradual acceptance of discussion about queer issues is gaining in India, which is very, very, very prominently, focused. This is manifested in the lack of inhibitions of leading actors and actresses about portraying queer characters on screen. Viewers are not being critical of their decision. Instead, they appreciate strong performances. Lisa Ray and Kalki Cochin to have featured in such web series. So the acceptance and openness of such actors to play such characters can be interpreted as indicative of our society's gradual opening up to the fact that queer people are there, are expected and productive and have a lot to speak about. Through their content, OTT platforms can become the community's voice by commissioning more projects dealing with the subject. So when compared to the number of productions being invested in by service providers, series dealing with the topic of gender and sexuality are minimal. Between 2016 and the current period of 2022, originals exploring alternative sexuality are just 31 in 6 years. However, the positive aspect is that such stories are being told and gaining appreciation from viewers. Messages percolate into households and exposure is being provided to the feelings and thoughts of queer individuals, something mainly unknown to the majority. How will it impact society's outlook towards the LGBTQIA community and its members remains speculative. However, it can be stated that more content and sensitive dealing with the subject can probably go a long way in sensitizing society and stimulating them to be more inclusive of gender minorities. Why I have chosen this topic, let me also, obviously I would like to talk about more of the vernacular, especially the Bengali OTT queer content later on. The generation which we are the teachers of a generation, basically they belong to the OTT generation. So not only last 2-3 years, it's been the last 6 years, we can see that hardly they read newspaper. I'm talking about the students, the masters and graduates to undergrad students. They read newspapers, they go for the news channels and all through smartphones, and obviously the lower rate of internet and all. Most of them, they are almost on the phone, on the way, they are watching either online portals or they are into the OTT platforms. So I think time has come for us researchers to take this this platform and of course this alternative gender issues very seriously. So as of now, the first part I would like to deliver to this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mausumi. So I have so much and I just don't have the time. That is the worst thing that happens to anyone who wants things to be a certain way. 1 minute, my battery also decided to so I think we have less time and I think we need to sort of wrap up. But before that, I want you people to quickly in 1 minute sort of give me your views on coming back to what we were talking about. Kulveen, I wanted you to tell me a little bit to begin with about this fact that, brands or creative sort of companies and, those who create the content and those where sensitivity is an issue, because remember we set the base by saying that we are going to be talking about gender in terms of not mere numbers or mere presence, which is now tokenism, but we're going to talk about the voice. We're going to talk about the point of view, and that is where sensitivity really comes in. And the example which you gave of the particular deodorant, which essentially was handled by actually seeing that it was not really any agency that made that advertisement. It was really about in-house, some people getting together and thinking they knew how to crack the audience, right? So I want you to tell me in 1 minute, how do you look at these voices, which are not, the fact that there is no sensitivity, being sensitive is something debatable in the sense that somehow I feel, now my hypothesis is that our social media interaction has actually made us lose our sense of proportion in life. Because, like we are there, we are saying everything, but we're forgetting that it's a public platform. We tend to kind of treat it like a drawing room conversation, or even a bedroom conversation sometimes. So what do you think? How is that going to sort of, how will that change, in the sense, if we really want things like gender, which are serious, inclusion, serious issues, which require some sort of not only sensitivity, but a maturity and a self introspection on these kind of values? How will we bridge that gap?
Okay, to address the first part of your question, see, we all know that advertising primarily was a boys' club. It was the triaca of Piyush Pandey, Prasun Joshi, and R. Balakrishnan, who became the icons of an Indian advertising, and also everybody idolized them. Whosoever wanted to enter the creative department wanted to be them. We never talked about a Preeti Nair. We never spoke about a Swati Bhattacharya. We conveniently missed out on how Malvika has contributed, and so many other women who've been invisibly doing a lot of campaigns. So it's been a very convenient world in the creative industry, in which on one side you have these perpetuation of stereotypes, completely not taking into account, changing audience choices, how audiences engage with media, with products, with brands, and with the issues of inclusion and responsibility, especially after the viral outbreak. That is one side. But on the other side, you have this whole idea of brand authentication index, in which suddenly you have this flurry of gender sensitive campaigns, especially made to present a certain identity of trans people. Personal disclosures have become this new favorite of the ad film or the long formats in advertising. So there are two worlds of advertising, clearly, which are not really complementary to each other. When you say, why has creative industry been so reductionist, been so not sensitive or disproportionate to women representations, as well as women in the workforce? The irony is, at the entry level in advertising and in the creative industry or persuasive industry at large, has a lot of women, almost equal. We have about 49% women at the entry level. But as we start moving up, mid-management, we lose out. And then towards the end, we hardly have any creative directors that we can think of, right? So that makes all the difference to begin with. But also, women who are there as part of creative teams, they continuously have to fight to negotiate the space for non-sexist. The minute they say, well, this is not funny, this is sexist, they'll say, but you don't have a sense of humor. So within communication, we are continuously, I used to do it in early 2000, and my students do it even now. Every day they call me up, how sexism, how, gender-based humor, and various aspects of, insubordination in advertising industry is so prevalent. So one way to negotiate this space is that we self-promote. We need to tell in our classrooms, in our discussions everywhere, that women have made some amazing ads. There is a Maggie Wells for every David Ogilvy. There is a Preeti Nair who's been making some amazing campaigns. There is an Indian Creative Forum where communicators, storytellers in persuasive communication, in various aspects of image communication, attention and engagement communication, they are doing some incredible work. People do not know where are the women ad filmmakers. There is a Namita for every, Matthew. So you have to continuously tell people the stories of women contributors in Indian communication. That is one, so that we have our own icons. And we, in the creative communication, academia, research, as well as in practice, have to continuously assert that a campaign will do well if it is high on gender sensitivity quotient, that we have to respect the guidelines of the regulators. If ASCII's come up with the new guidelines in June 2022, they are 9-point scale. Let's measure an advertisement to that scale, and that will do well in terms of purchase intent, in terms of equity, in terms of sales, in terms of return on investment. So good ads also make great brands.
In fact, one thing that I wanted to add here was that a lot of what you said is being professed now is something that went into development communication. So, a lot of these things were used to basically bring about behavior change. But when it comes to hardcore brands, because probably that's what marketing is all about, and that is what liberalized capitalist society is all about, macho and masculine in terms of their attributes. I think this is something that needs to now go into the commercial side.
Actually, men don't pay attention to qualitative findings.
Yes.
And that is why the lack.
Geeta ma'am, I want you to quickly tell me, so where are we vis-a-vis this topic? So are we saying far away from towards the myth, this gender balance, or what is it that we need to be kind of conscious about or take cognizance of when we talk about gender balance?
I would like to actually indicate that a kind of a beginning needs to be made, because I think the whole idea of discussion is where do we go from here, and whether a difference can be made. Because if we understand that there is a widening gap, actually I alluded to it, I somehow disagree with this whole idea that digital democratization would really filter down to those levels where the inclusion is still a dream. So, because why do I say that? I say that because if you look at the way we are progressing, because I think this whole attempt to understand gender and its inclusion is more framed in a more Western construct. Which is that if you modernize, if you bridge that gap in terms of numbers, most of the issues will get settled. But I think we have seen this. In fact, what I was actually suggesting, that when more number of mobile devices come into the market in the hands of the people, and I mentioned that more are going to be in the hands of rural areas. And we know that rural areas, I think we are also forgetting that there is a local communication coming up, where the images, where the local culture is actually getting assimilated in a local content. And that's where the challenge is. I'm not going to say there is a danger inherent there, but there is a challenge, because we also know that most of the discussion that we are having here is more middle class, okay? Our understanding is more middle class, because we are thinking that out there, what we see is the whole reality. It's a partial reality. We also have to, and the whole debate and discussion in Southeast Asia has been that nothing has changed much, because we found that across all the countries that we map, nothing has changed much. Though entry of women in the media is not zero, but it's not even, same. So why things are not changing? And even in those areas where change could have happened, like in urban settlements and urban content, in urban media, in fact, it has become more aggressive. So, we can talk about, maybe it's a neoliberalism approach that actually makes us more conscious of, how many eyeballs, how much traction. It's more in terms of how do you monetize that visual engagement with the viewer. And we find, in fact, I would have loved talking more about, gender-based violence, how it is becoming a more dominant image and more acceptable. And our study, the SWAN and IMC study, showed that people are actually, it's a voyeuristic engagement with the screen.
Yes.
And because also with no regulation, we have to actually understand OTT is not really a boon. There is no regulation. It's a streamless, borderless access to all kinds of content. And it's being streamed across all levels of, understanding. So it's almost like, I'm worried that, we don't have a media policy, and, self-regulation is still a kind of a thing that is being little hedgy. People are hedgy about it. So coming back to the issue that most of the, media education, it has been through the discussion, UNESCO, and, in different venues, we have talked about that maybe media education can be one of the gateways. And we found through our survey, I think we were the first ones to do survey across all the major communication programs in the country, and likewise in other South Asian countries, that gender is a standalone kind of a thing. And I have actually underscored the point that we need to mainstream it. And mainstream is across all aspects of communication and journalism, like reporting, editing. It's not talking about women. It's talking about a perspective which is more holistic, more inclusive. So I think that's very important for us to understand that's doable. But if you look at UGC also, they're not even mindful of the fact that it's an issue. It's not there. You have a pegged environment, but not really gender. And gender is more seen as women and child, women and
correct.
So it's actually trying to put more emphasis on reproductive aspects of a woman's life, not really about her abilities, her aspirations, her skills, which need to be honed more. So there are many issues, and I believe that we should actually highlight that intersectionalism of gender with race, with ethnicity, with class, with education is very important. Only then we can bring into a more comprehensive frame what actually are our concerns in gender and media. And I would like to also point out that many a times, because there is no critical thinking as such, women themselves actually are purveyors of this kind of mindset, because there is in most of the media schools, girls actually go for more softer programs because they think they don't have the skill, and also because security is a big issue for them. And we found that this is actually, we have had a Me Too kind of a trend where women are talking about what kind of but it's only women who come from a particular background and class. But we have found that there are many issues which women face, but they're not able to actually talk about. And most of the newspapers, all the big newspapers that we track across all the 10 states, most of them do not have an ICC. They don't even know what it is. And even women don't know what kind of rights they have. So I think apart from education, the work environment and the ability of women to stay on and also provide that kind of a kind of a changing the whole dynamics, she needs to have that critical thinking, because otherwise you find most of the women who go up, they're more like men. They actually, it has been seen, they actually further entrench those ideas because the environment around them is so that they fall in line. They don't actually, want to have a disruption because they fall in line. So nothing gets changed as such. And this is, we have seen people are not interested in women's perspective. Even if a woman is standing and watching a particular incident happening, the mic doesn't go to her, the mic goes to a man because perhaps he's more articulate about talking, whereas she is a first-hand source of that information. So this whole idea is because it's more commercialized, the markets are very dominant in trying to, and there's a lot of competition and there's a lot of commercialization. So we are hemmed in by these kind of trends unless we bring about a more, a perspective which is more humanitarian, more inclusive, rights-based, and we're also moving towards sustainable development goals where gender equity, number 5, is a very strong goal for us to achieve unless we bring some measures right here within our schools, within our courses, and within our workspace. Nothing is going to change radically because policies are there, but their implementation gets hemmed in by, the resistance which is there in our social, cultural, normative practices. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Geeta ma'am. I mean, you kind of summed it all up, and I really, really have no time. Thank you so much, DME, for extending this platform for me. But then, this discussion is going to keep going on, and I think we are going to very soon have a forum where we are going to get together and again, take it and close it. Because for Padma and for Mausumi, I have no time left, and I know there was so much to discuss. But quick takeaways, therefore, is that we have miles to go before we rest. And I think we have to strategically, completely now turn around and look at gender not as something that, we only talk about, gender as something that we accept within us, along with inclusiveness being really important. And in today's political, social, cultural milieu, these thoughts and the introspection on these issues is extremely, extremely important. With that, I'm going to bring close to this panel discussion. Thank you very much, everybody. This kind of gives me a sleepless night because there's so much to do, so much to put together and take it forward with the youngsters who are watching us and listening to us, because unfortunately, we're not giving them a good world to step into. We're giving them a lot of confusion, a lot of choices, and no direction really. But that's life 2022. Thank you very much. Thanks, Sukriti, for being so patient with me. Thank you so much.
Professor Ganjoo, we'll take 5 minutes to formally wind up the session. Yeah. Khushi?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Khushi will come later. Just,
okay.
Yeah.
Simon. Yeah.
Let me just wind up the session formally. So from print to digital to advertising to OTT, redefining role of women and expanding horizons of knowledge about the other sex. This profound in-depth panel discussion with decorated panelists and our enthusiastic moderator has proved to be a landmark in creating knowledge, which will mark its presence in the academic field for times to come. So heartfelt gratitude to all the panelists.
Sukriti, you
have
can...
we lost?
Yeah. Sukriti, you can take it.
Sama is somewhere.
Yes, sir, I am here, and I am just handing it over to Khushi. Before I do that, I just want to remind everybody that we are sending the feedback link for this session in the chat box. So everyone is requested, all the participants are requested to kindly fill it. Thank you so much, Dr. Maithili Ganjoo. Thank you so much, Dr. Geeta Bamezai, Dr. Mausumi, Dr. Kulveen, Trehan, and Dr. Padma Rani for being here today. And my co-coordinator, Ms. Saima Parvez.
Yeah,
we have had a wonderful
Sukriti, Saima is there. Yeah.
I am so sorry. Suddenly my laptop crashed. So as I said, I'm extremely thankful to be present in such a decorated panel discussion with such brilliant academicians. And I'm sure that this panel discussion will mark its presence for times to come. And now I would formally like to invite our torchbearer, our backbone of DME, Dr. Sushmita Bala ma'am, to please give the concluding remarks.
Thank you, Saima. Not much to say. It was such a thought-provoking session. Thank you, Professor Maithili, for bringing such an enlightening session for ICAN5. The panelists, Professor Geeta Bamezai, Professor Padma Rani, Dr. Mausumi Bhattacharyya, and Dr. Kulveen Trehan very categorically pointed out the imbalance that exists in media, news as well as entertainment, women portrayal and gender insensitivity in film and OTT content was also unlayered by you all. I thank you all for adding value to ICAN. Thank you, thanks to all of you, and thanks to all attendees in this session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for your closing remarks. And now I would like Ria to please take over for Board of Thanks.
My foremost and heartfelt thanks to the session experts to share the valuable insights about the theme Achieving Gender Balance in Media Today, Myth or Reality. Sincere thanks to management of DME, Aman Sahani, Vice Chairman, Honorable Justice Bhavar Singh, Director General DME, Professor Dr. Ravikant Swami, Director DME, for their support in every endeavor being taken by DME Media School. Heartfelt thanks to Professor Dr. Amrish Saxena, Dean DME Media School, Professor Dr. Susmita Bala, Head DME Media School, for their motivation in planning and executing the flagship event of DME Media School. Thanks to Dr. Manasvi Maheshwari, Associate Professor and Associate Convener or ICAN5, for overall coordination for the International Media Conference. Thanks to Sumantra Sarthidas and Vishal Sahai, Assistant Professors, and Yogesh Sharma, Faculty at DME Media School, for digital and production support of ICAN5. Thanks to Dr. Manmeet Kaur, Associate Professor and Academic Coordinator of DME Media School, and Pramod Kumar Pandey, Assistant Professor, for their support for their efforts in supporting ICAN5. Thanks to Shruti V.S., Assistant Professor, DME Media School, for managing technical and cultural team along with student coordination. Mohammad Kamil and Sukriti Arora, Assistant Professors for newsletter, press briefing, and media coordination support. Dr. Ritika Saxena, Assistant Professor for designing and creative support. Saima Parvez and Dr. Sumedha for their support in social media management. I thank Pavan Saxena, Anmol Mehta, Tulika Arora, CM Anand, Abhishek Yadav, and Jagan for administrative and logistic support. Student Convener Priya Yadav for her consistent support in ICAN5. All student coordinators from newsletter, production, hospitality, anchoring, cultural and digital operations for their coordination and consistent effort for the conference. Thanks to all the researchers, participants who have sent their full research papers for this International Media Conference and participants of various sessions. Special thanks to our conference partner, knowledge partners, international partners, cultural partner, and media partners.